Our cover story tonight comes from Helsinki, the capital of Finland, where a Trump-Putin Summit took place. The two leaders held a one-on-one interaction. The interpreters for both of them were present, but their advisors were kept away from this interaction. This format only added unpredictability to the outcome of this meeting. It was supposed to last for 90 minutes. It lasted well over 2 hours. Both leaders emerged out of the meeting room after a conversation that went beyond the stipulated time, and then they held a press conference. Listen in to the first reactions.
Constructive dialogue between the United States and Russia affords the opportunity to open new pathways toward peace and stability in our world. I would rather take a political risk in pursuit of peace than to risk peace in pursuit of politics.
If we join the ranks and work together, hopefully we will reach this understanding with our American partners. Today's negotiations reflected our joint wish with President Trump to redress this negative situation in the bilateral relationship, outline the first steps for improving this relationship to restore the acceptable level of trust and going back to the previous level of interaction on all mutual interests issues.
It was a one-of-its-kind press conference. The Russian president, as you can see in those pictures, was asked if the ball, as far as the Syria situation was concerned, was in his court. In response, this is what he did. He handed over the ball to the American president, saying the ball is now in your court. And Donald Trump then tossed it to his wife, Melania Trump, saying, Melania, here you go.
That's very nice. That will go to my son, Barron. We have no question. In fact, Melania, here you go. Okay.
The final question. And before the press conference began, a reporter was taken out of the venue. So it was dramatic, it was full of controversy, and there's a lot of expectation. The stakes are very high, while the president of the US might brag and boast of being the king of deals. Today's meeting with President Vladimir Putin sees the scales tilted in favor of the latter, the Russian president. Our next report explains how this summit in Helsinki was a geopolitical victory for the Russian leader.
Now they're saying it with Putin. Well, Putin is highly prepared, and Trump, will he be prepared for the meeting? Trust me, we'll do just fine. We'll do just fine.
With this declaration, the American president expressed his confidence before his meeting with his Russian counterpart. It is a summit that has invited a backlash for President Trump, both at home and abroad. But for the man on the other side of the table, it is being seen as a massive victory. With a $12 billion image makeover stunt in the name of the Football World Cup having successfully been executed, President Putin now hopes to secure another victory.
The President of the United States is treating us with the respect that we deserve. That in itself is a win from the summit, even if no other type of agreements come out of it. Putin has a much lower bar for a really successful summit than the United States does, because at the end of the day, just that handshake and that smile and that respect gives him huge dividends and huge benefits for the many audiences that he plays to.
And why not? The two nations, after all, have been long-standing adversaries. There have been charges of Russian meddling in the American polls. The situation has also been tense after charges of a Novichok attack carried out on a Russian double agent in the United Kingdom, one that created ripples across the globe. The two nations do not see eye to eye when it comes to the ongoing conflict in Syria. While the US has been accused of tacit support to the rebels in the war-torn nation, Putin and his men have backed the Assad-led government. Washington and Moscow have also had a fallout after Russia's annexation of Crimea around 4 years ago. And thus the meeting is keeping experts on the tenterhooks. Reports in the American media claim that veteran national security hands are so worried that Trump will be outmaneuvered by the former KGB agent that they are praying that nothing at all comes out of this summit. The fears are not unfounded. The tone of the meet was set way before it even began. President Putin kept Trump waiting for over an hour before the summit began. The two leaders have met twice before and spoken over a hotline over 8 times. But with the ties between the two nations at an all-time low, there are more eyes waiting and watching every move that the American president makes. Bureau Report, WION.
So why should the Putin-Trump talks in Helsinki matter so much to India? On the face of it, this meeting has nothing to do with New Delhi. No direct gains for India. But there's more to it than meets the eye. Better relations between Washington and Moscow may have a positive fallout elsewhere in areas where India has interests. For instance, Russia's proximity to China is a matter of concern to India. This flows directly from the estrangement between Washington and Moscow. They've had differences over a range of issues, including Putin's decision to occupy and annex Crimea 4 years ago. This resulted in American sanctions. Russia's support of the Bashar al-Assad government in Syria is another point of contention. Russia's support for Iran's role in Syria. And of course, American allegations of Russia meddling in its elections. The result has been sanctions. They've hit Russian markets hard. They've dented the ruble and they've sent shares of key public sector firms in Russia plummeting. Moscow has been forced to move closer to Beijing then. In the process, it has built relations with Pakistan. Russia has shifted its diplomatic position on Afghanistan, essentially backing Pakistan's line. Moscow is now talking to the Taliban, and rumor has it that it may even be arming the Taliban. What does all of this mean for India? It means that India may no longer be in a position to count on Russia's support to balance off other powers such as the US and China. In the event of a confrontation with China, India may not get Russia's backing. It also directly impacts India's military. An estimated 70% of the weaponry used in India is of Russian origin. Supply of spares could become a problem. Timely maintenance support for India's fleet of Russian submarines may be delayed. Agreements on new arms deals may not happen. So there are potential challenges going forward. There's also CAATSA. That's Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, CAATSA. It's been mandated by the US Congress. Sanctions will apply to any country that buys Russian military equipment. So if India buys the S-400 Triumph missile defense system from Russia, American sanctions will follow. American officials have reportedly told India to put off this purchase of the S-400 by at least 1 year. They're hoping for the atmospherics to improve in Washington, but the S-400 is vital for India's defense. One S-400 regiment can secure Delhi from any missile attack. If India is to deploy the system on time, the final set of agreements must be done as soon as possible. Only when the agreements are done will Russia begin production and then the deliveries subsequently. If Trump and Putin are able to hammer out a consensus on some of these key differences, it may have a positive fallout in other areas. It may become easier for American administration officials to persuade the Congress there to give India a waiver from sanctions for buying the S-400. The US may relax sanctions against Russia, which may persuade Putin to step back from his close embrace of China. India gains both ways. And that is why this Helsinki summit is very important for New Delhi. Since the Cold War, Russia and the US have been on the opposite sides of the spectrum. Both Trump and Putin seem to be part of forging the new ties, this new equation between the US and Russia. Apart from the key issues on the table, the personal chemistry, some say, between the two leaders is going to be in focus. A lot has been said about it, how they're an odd couple in terms of their temperament and style. They couldn't be any more different. Vladimir Putin is never caught off guard in public. And Donald Trump is known to speak off the cuff. Putin is off social media. He does not even own a smartphone, reportedly. The Kremlin often relies on domestic media to spread the president's opinion. In contrast, Donald Trump puts his opinions out on social media. While the Russian president rarely shows his displeasure in public, maybe raise an eyebrow to express his emotion, his American counterpart is often caught angrily contradicting his own advisors in public, sometimes even himself. Another big difference between the two world leaders is that Vladimir Putin is up to date with intelligence agencies' reports and press summaries. Donald Trump's advisors reportedly struggle to get him to read even the shortest of briefings. There is, as we said, a world of difference between these two leaders. And even before Donald Trump landed in Helsinki, he was in London. So we'll also dwell for a bit on Britain's favourite obsession, the royal family, and what the US president did there. His visit to Windsor was carefully watched by his supporters and critics alike. While few expected him to follow all protocols during his first visit to Britain, they did not anticipate that he'll break it twice, with the Queen no less. It shouldn't really matter. The world has bigger fish to fry, but we'll come to that later. First, let's tell you what happened in London. There were two complaints against Donald Trump. One, that him and the First Lady, they did not bow before the Queen of England. And the second, that the US President walked in front of the Queen. After this event, royal commentators in the West were quick to slam Donald Trump for his lack of preparedness. One even described this meeting as, quote-unquote, complete mayhem. We beg to differ. What's the point of so-called royal protocol in this day and age? These monarchs are mere figureheads. Too bad they're trapped in the colonial past. Why must the rest of the world conform, we ask? The expectation of a bow or a courtesy is out of date, but it does not stop there. While meeting the royals, there is a specific set of rules to be followed. They call it protocol. Like who can speak first? Where should one look? How should one address the royals? How to stand? Even how to sit? These practices date back to the time when these monarchs were treated like gods and accorded an almost divine status. But in a democracy, is there really a place for these practices that are a reflection of inherited power and privilege? The royals of Britain are highly secretive. Their interactions with the government of the day happen behind the curtains and away from the public eye. The British government picks up the check for this monarchy's official expenditure. It's called the sovereign grant. According to one report, the true cost, the real cost of the royal family to the British taxpayer is more than £300 million every year. That's nearly 10 times more of what the official numbers say. So has the monarchy lost its luster and is now little more than a burden on the common man? The answer is yes. The present responsibilities of the Queen of England reduce her to a mere figurehead. She cannot take a stand on any issue of public importance. If she does, it's of little consequence. There has not been any scrutiny of her role, nor has anything from her weekly audience with the Prime Minister been made public. But Donald Trump was quite happy with his meeting with the Queen. After leaving the United Kingdom, the US President was asked about it during an interview, and he said that he even discussed Brexit with the Queen. It's not often that you see a scoreboard as high as 4-2 in a Football World Cup final. It is also not often that you see the streets of Russia flooded with tourists. If this 2018 World Cup was the best in the game's history, the hosts too displayed an equally commendable, if not unprecedented, hospitality. So much so that from being portrayed as a malignant player on the world stage a few months ago, Russia has transformed its image into one of a dream destination for many. Here's a report.
It was December 2nd, 2010. The world's largest country won the rights to host the World Cup 2018. It was to host 64 matches, thousands of fans and millions of dreams. However, since the winter of 2010, the country's record in politics, human rights and sports only headed south. Be it the expose of the state-sponsored doping scam in 2014, or the gunning down of Putin's most vocal critic in 2015, or the allegations of tinkering with the United States elections, Russia attracted negative criticism, possibly all it could. The World Cup was Russia's chance at garnering back its lost reputation. It was not only a chance for Russia to showcase its ability of being a responsible host, but it also was the biggest marketing platform that the country would be getting in recent times. In short, the World Cup was Russia's only hope for a desperately needed image makeover. Just days before the tournament kicked off, there were incomplete stadiums, cussing locals and unprepared home team. Cut to week 1 into the tournament, the picture had changed. It was for the world to see how Russia has seized the opportunity. From deploying English-speaking volunteers in the streets, trains, stadium and bus stops, to installing the football fountain and fan zones. From promoting local cuisines to developing tourist spots. Russian President Vladimir Putin ensured that his country had turned into every football fan's paradise and every tourist's dream. A hospitable host, very organized, modern and ready to go out of their way to help the tourists. This was the talk of the town. The locals sang, danced and partied with the fans on the streets and in the cafes. FIFA too is a happy lot today. The footballing body termed Russia as an open, friendly and a safe country. This is exactly what Putin was looking for. Stereotypes broken and a clean slate. Now with the tournament over, Russia has extended the football fans' visa-free entry to the remaining part of the year. Sports, as they say, has the power to unite. And in Russia's case, it has proven to be so true. Bureau Report, WION.
Let's take you straight to Paris, where the French team has arrived after winning the FIFA World Cup. And look at the crowds there, swelling by the minute. There's going to be a World Cup victory parade on an open-top bus down the Champs-Élysées before a reception with the president himself, Emmanuel Macron. Look at the numbers, it's incredible. It's for the second time in their history that France have won the World Cup. And this is the Arc de Triomphe in central Paris, where people have gathered, waving the flags there. Experts say the frenzied football celebration marks a new kind of patriotism in this country. About 1 million supporters have gathered on the Paris Avenue after the match on Sunday night, watching this Arc de Triomphe lit up in red, white and blue with the players' names and towns projected on it. Incredible sight there, and the enthusiasm of the fans and the players infectious. We saw similar scenes in Croatia earlier today when lots of people gathered, but nothing matches this. These are pictures from Zagreb in Croatia earlier today when the team was out and given a hero's welcome when they landed home after making it to the finals of the FIFA World Cup unbeaten. And let's take you to those live images from Paris. As far as the eye can see, it's a big throng of the crowds, the football fans who've gathered to welcome their team. And the French president himself was there to root for them, to cheer for them in Russia, and then was seen later dancing with them in the locker room. He's made it to the headlines across the world, the team as much as the president. And now he's going to be hosting the French football team as they return winners. This World Cup has been a tournament of great upsets with traditional heavyweights being booted out. But France has had a dream run and they beat Croatia 4-2 in the finals last night. It's not just the team, the Croatian president also won hearts. Kolinda Grabar-Kitarovic turned out to be a trendsetter in more ways than one. She went to root for her team in Russia. Her modesty in flying economy class with the Croatian fans and taking group selfie photos became the talk of the internet. She shared a picture with her fellow passengers. The president opted to watch the quarterfinals match between Croatia and Russia from the stands and not the VIP section, while the NATO summit kept her away from the semi-finals in which Croatia beat England. The president flew back immediately to Moscow to witness her country play in the FIFA finals for the first time ever. Refusing to follow the dress code for the VIP box, she chose to don the Croatian team's jersey just like any other fan in the stands. If reports are to be believed, Kitarovic has refused to receive the salary for the days that she was not at work while attending the football matches. Even on the podium and under pouring rain, the Croatian president made it a point to stand tall and congratulate every single French player and official that came up. Through the course of this tournament, she has been widely praised for being one of the most sporting of political leaders in attendance, in defeat and in victory. The first ever woman president of Croatia showed charisma that left a lasting impression. And there's another president, another world leader who's grabbing the spotlight with the way he conducts his office and his leadership style. Mexico's president-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador, AMLO as he's popularly known, is vowing to bring in radical change. The anti-establishment leftist was elected in a landslide victory on the 1st of July. He has now promised to lead his anti-corruption, pro-austerity charge by example. His approach to security is one of the first signs of how he's breaking from the mold of a typical Mexican presidency. He has decided to travel without armed guards. In recent months, despite a surge of political killings in Mexico, López Obrador has ventured into drug cartel strongholds rarely visited by his predecessor. Mexican president-elect AMLO, has now announced that he plans to slash the presidential salary, meaning his own salary, and earn less than half of what the current president makes when he takes office in December as part of an austerity push in the government. He said that he will take home 108,000 pesos a month, that is $5,707 at the current exchange rate. He has also promised that no public official will earn more than him during his 6-year term as president. He has also vowed to cut back on taxpayer-funded perks for high-level government officials such as chauffeurs, private medical insurance, etc. The official presidential residence will become a cultural center. And the ex-presidents will no longer receive pensions. What an example he's setting. Imagine someone trying to do that in India. Now to a developing story. Gaza witnessed fresh violence over the weekend. It was the most intense flare-up in violence since the 2014 war between Israel and Palestine. 2 teenagers died in Gaza after Israel conducted airstrikes. The Palestinians hit back with more missiles and bombs. This is how things stand right now.
Rockets hit the city of Gaza once again over the weekend. Both Israel and Palestine struck targets in each other's territory. This video is from the Israeli army. It claims Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip have been destroyed. 2 teenage Palestinians were killed in the Israeli airstrikes. Eyewitnesses said that civilians too were killed when these strikes hit an empty building in Gaza City. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Tel Aviv will not accept any violence from Gaza.
בהתייעצות עם שר הביטחון, הרמטכ"ל והצמרת הביטחונית של ישראל, החלטנו על פעולה עוצמתית נגד הטרור של החמאס. צה"ל הנחית על החמאס את המכה הקשה ביותר מאז צוק איתן, ואנחנו נגביר את העוצמה של ההתקפות שלנו ככל שידרש.
It was Palestine's turn to retaliate now. It struck an enclave in the Israeli territory. Reports say militants in Gaza fired more than 90 mortar bombs and rockets towards Israel. While some were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome missiles, the attack did set off the sirens. Children and women ran to safety inside the shelters as ambulances rushed to treat the injured. This is the most intense flare-up in violence since the 2014 war. The United Nations has called on both sides to end the violence.
Everybody understands that unless the situation is diffused, we will very quickly be back to another confrontation. And I expect all parties, all sides, to do their best right now, not next month, not next week, right now, to prevent this escalation.
Since March this year, Gaza has been at the center of the anti-Israeli protests. More than 100 Palestinians have died this year. The protests were sparked in part by President Donald Trump's decision to move the American embassy to Jerusalem. Bureau Report, WION.
Now for our continuous coverage of the Pakistan election. Ousted Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and his daughter Maryam have filed an appeal in the Islamabad High Court against their sentencing in the Avonfield Properties corruption case. A 2-judge bench of the court will hear the case tomorrow. Nawaz Sharif's son-in-law, Safdar, also filed an appeal as a 10-day deadline for the review petition expired. They've argued that the verdict be declared null and void as it was full of flaws and that all 3 be released on bail. They also stated that the decision on the Calibri font was taken without consulting any IT expert. An accountability court had last week held Sharif and 2 of his family members guilty and sentenced them to long jail terms for alleged corruption in the Avonfield Properties case. Nawaz Sharif has been sentenced to 10 years in jail. Maryam Nawaz, his daughter, has been sentenced to 7 years and her husband Safdar to 1 year in the same case. And even as the Sharifs filed that appeal against their sentence, there has been no immediate respite. Both Nawaz Sharif and Maryam Nawaz are locked in the Adiala jail complex in Rawalpindi. The campaign mode is still on, though. Despite the two most prominent leaders of the party being behind bars, an audio clip has been released on social media where Maryam Sharif is heard making an emotional appeal to the people of Pakistan. Listen in.
की बेटी, आप सबकी बेटी बहन मरियम नवाज आपसे मुखातिब हूँ। आपको मालूम है कि मैं अपनी वालिदा को शदीद बीमारी की हालत में छोड़ कर आई हूँ। मैं अपने वालिद के साथ लंदन पहुँची तो वो अस्पताल के आईसीयू में बेहोशी की हालत में थी। जिस दिन हम लंदन से रवाना हुए उस दिन उन्होंने ज़रा देर के लिए, चंद सेकंड्स के लिए अपनी आंखें खोली, हमें देखा, लेकिन हमारी बात न हो सकी। आप माँ बेटी का रिश्ता जानते हैं। अपने दिल पर काबू पाकर मैं यहाँ जेल काटने के लिए, कानून के आगे सर झुकाने के लिए आ गई हूँ। दुआ कीजिए अल्लाह ताला मेरी वालिदा को सेहत अता फरमाए और मैं उनको सही सलामत देख सकूँ, गले मिल सकूँ।
Not far behind is her father Nawaz Sharif. Another audio clip purportedly by the former Pakistani Prime Minister has him appealing to his voters to vote against the powers that have held him and the nation, as he puts it, hostage.
मैं देख रहा हूं कि पूरे मुल्क को एक जेल में बदल दिया गया है। हमें अब जंजीरें तोड़ना होंगी, इस कैद से निकलना होगा, 70 साल से जारी खेल से निजात हासिल करना होगी जिसने कायद-ए-आज़म के पाकिस्तान को तमाशा बना दिया है। इसीलिए वोट को इज्जत दो का झंडा उठाकर निकला हूं और मेरे वतन के गयूर लोगों, आप भी ये झंडा उठाकर निकलो।
And as Pakistan heads towards this historic election, here's a story from the country's Punjab province where some women are all set to cast aside decades-old tradition that bans them from voting.
They were banned from voting soon after the partition of British India. They were told that visiting a public polling booth would dishonor them. They silently obeyed and haven't exercised their rights since. But this year, in Pakistan's Punjab province, the women of Mohri-Sur village are all set to take on the patriarchal taboo as they are ready to walk down to the polling stations and cast their ballots on the 25th of July.
यहाँ के मर्द हजरात की जो यानी कि इनकी अना पे जो भारी ज़रब पड़ती है वो यही है कि औरतें जो हैं वो वोट कास्ट ना करें। शायद ये हमें बेवकूफ़ समझते हैं।
According to the Election Commission of Pakistan, over 9.13 million women voters across the country have newly entered the electoral rolls. The poll commission has also declared that a constituency will be declared null and void if at least 10% of the electorate are not women. This comes as a huge boost to women's rights in Pakistan, where the majority of women are not even allowed to choose their husbands, leave alone the country's government. However, not all women are ready to break the glass ceiling. Among them is this young student.
अगर हम खुद अकेले जाएंगे तो उधर कोई लड़ाई फसाद होगा, उधर फितना होगा, उधर हमारे मर्द हमें मारना शुरू कर दें, गाली गलौज शुरू कर दें, तो फिर हमारी इज्जत कहाँ जाएगी। इससे बेहतर है हम घर में ही बैठ जाएं।
The head of this village too chooses to fight for tradition rather than the rights of local women.
हम अपनी औरतों के वोट नहीं डलवाएंगे और उस वक़्त से आज तक ये एक रिवायत बन चुकी है कि हमारी औरतें उन अपने आबाओ अजदाद, उन अपने बड़ों के फैसले के एहतराम में वोट नहीं डालती।
It's this very tradition that Fawzia Talib shattered when she became the first woman from Mohri-Pur to cast her vote in the local polls in 2015.
औरतें वहाँ की इसलिए वोट नहीं डालती कि उनको सपोर्ट नहीं है। वो इस जो उनका रवायत है वो अपने शोहर या बाप या भाई उनके ख़िलाफ़ नहीं जाना चाहती हूँ। वो कहती हैं कि जैसे वो अगर हमें लेके चलेंगे तो हम वोट कास्ट कर लेंगे, अगर वो नहीं तो वो नहीं जाना चाहती, वो नहीं डालना चाहती। पहला वोट मैंने ही कास्ट किया था और मैंने भी इसी वजह से किया था कि इसको तोड़ा जाए इस रिवायत को।
Joining Fawzia is women like Bismillah Noor, who are not ready to give up their fight against unjust traditions. As she calls for a meeting under the village's jambolan tree, she hopes that on the 25th of July, there will be hundreds of those who will spill ink on history and write it afresh. Bureau Report, WION.
Millions of Harry Potter fans can experience the world of magic like never before now. The Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios in Hollywood in LA, California has added some new features for muggles and wizards. Take a look.
Harry Potter fans across the globe have got more to enjoy at Universal Studios. The theme park unveiled new elements in its Harry Potter-inspired land. So if you want to have a bite of the famous butterbeer ice cream or cast interactive spells around Hogsmeade with special wands, it's time to head to the Diagon Alley at Los Angeles. One can also take a look at the nighttime lights at Hogwarts Show. There are numerous ways to consume the butterscotch flavoured treat with foamy caramel topping. You can order it as a beverage served cold, hot or an ice slush. There's also butterbeer fudge and butterbeer potted cream for the not so adventurous ones. 2 new spellcasting areas have been made available for wand weavers. One opening a mysterious door, the other making a chimney spew fire. All you have to do is stand on a marked spot and cast your spells. Alohomora that can unlock doors or Incendio that can trigger the chimney to spew fire. Fascinating, right? There are also numerous new Harry Potter-inspired clothes, including Professor Snape's majestic black attire, Hermione Granger's gown that she dons in the Goblet of Fire, and Harry and Ron's sweaters. Are you impressed already? Don't be, there's more in store. You can end your magical day with an engaging light show projected onto the Hogwarts castle. The Dance of Lights is a celebration of the historic 4 Hogwarts houses, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff and Slytherin. And if you need reminding, it sees lions, eagles, badgers and snakes weaving their way across the turrets and parapets of Hogwarts. Bureau Report, WION.